We all know that if you don't pay one of your utility bills, then eventually that utility will get shut off. This works with your electricity, it works like that with your phone bill, and it even works like that with your water bill. And you better believe if you don't pay, they will shut off your water, guys. And why am I making a video like this? Well, let me tell you, one of my viewers, Tim, who's been great. He's been sending me all kinds of stories, and I appreciate when anybody emails me stories that I can use on my channel. And I never thought I would see the day where I would be making a video almost entirely about the water bill. And the reason why is because there are planned increases for water bills all across the country right now. We're talking Florida, we're talking Georgia, we're talking Michigan, we're talking California, we're talking Idaho. And that's just to name a few. Those are just the ones that I know about for this video. And the reason why this all ties in together with what I talk about here on the channel is because this is something that nobody ever used to give a second thought, right? Like the water bill is just a small part of owning a home, and it's something everybody has to pay so you can flush the toilets and you can survive and drink water. But some of these water bills are becoming completely outrageous, and some of the increases are going to make it so that people won't be able to afford to pay. Let's start off with this first story here about two different apartment complexes in St. Petersburg, Florida, that were threatened to have their water shut off this past week. And they were both able to keep the water on, but let me tell you a little backstory about how this happened and how close they were to getting the water shut off and why they might not be out of the clear yet. In this apartment complex in St. Petersburg, Florida, where hundreds of people live, they were supposed to shut off the water on August 21st because the owner of the building, which is an LLC, of course, has an unpaid water bill of $350,000. Now, why did the city of St. Petersburg let it get to $350,000 to begin with? I have no clue. But this isn't the first time we've heard of this. Just a couple days ago, we talked about this guy that literally lost his home in Brooklyn over an unpaid water bill. So this is happening to people all over. And get this, because there was an imminent shutdown for the water in this complex, the city of St. Petersburg flat out told the residents here that, oh, you might want to find other housing ahead of the water shut-off deadline in case you're worried about it. So the landlord of this building hasn't been paying the water bill, and so the tenants who have been paying their rent are threatened with the idea that they may have to leave their home and get out of there in order to have a place that has running water. How insane is that? And good thing some of these tenants spoke up on the media and said, hey, listen, this isn't our responsibility. It's not our fault the landlord didn't pay. They're saying, we need assistance if we need to move. There's a lot of elderly people that live here that can't just pick up and leave, But what ended up happening is they did an emergency protest outside of City Hall before the water was shut off, and they were able to actually avoid getting the water shut off. But this doesn't mean that it's going to be permanent and that they're never going to have an issue with this. And in case anybody's wondering, I am walking through the Peacock Gap neighborhood here in San Rafael, California. Now, the residents of this apartment complex say that they've been living in poor conditions for a while now with mold and deferred maintenance, and the water shut-off notice was the last straw for some of them, and some of them did decide to just leave and find a new place to live because it's just not worth it anymore. And one of the residents said, hey, what if we just all stop paying until their landlord decides to fix all this stuff, including paying the water bill? It's like, yeah, that's an excellent idea. I've used that tactic myself with landlords in the past. If they didn't want to fix something that is in the lease that says, hey, this is your responsibility to fix this. If they don't want to do it, I'll say, okay, well then I'll pay for it, and I'm not going to pay you rent until that's paid off. That's what the tenants here should do. They should all fix these things themselves and withhold the rent until everything that they need fixed is fixed. And then that debt is paid off in the form of non-payment of rent. So the landlord ended up making a partial payment. So far, he's paid $140,000. So only about half of the balance has been paid. And the city of St. Petersburg says as long as the landlord keeps making payments, then there will be no interruption of the water service. And the thing is right now, this story got a ton of media attention, right? So it kind of forced the hand of the landlord to go ahead and do something and make the payments in order to keep the water turned on. But I wonder if this story never made it to the news, if the landlord ever would have lifted a finger, because if they're leaving the place in poor condition and with deferred maintenance, what do they care if the water gets shut off for a week or whatever, right? If there was no media attention surrounding it, focusing on them and highlighting the problem, my guess is they might have done nothing for a few weeks or even a few months. So this water bill problem is happening to people all over the country, even if you don't own a house. But it is particularly bad if you are a homeowner, because owning a home costs more than it ever has before when it comes to record high mortgage payments, record high property taxes, record high insurance rates. Well, now people are going to have record high utility bills, because I have lots of stories about this. Check this out. The first one is out of Utah. About 800,000 people who live in the Salt Lake Valley will soon see their water bill about 11% higher, which was just approved last week. Already at the public hearing that they had in order to decide whether or not they were going to do this, there was a lot of frustration and concern among the residents who attended, especially those on fixed incomes, who said the hike is an unfair burden on them. Somebody said, you know what? We get nothing out of this. We don't get any part of the increase, just an increase in taxes. We would like to see those in charge look at where you can cut and do better. Oh, and by the way, your property taxes are going to go up as well. So not only are you going to have a higher water bill, but you'll have higher property taxes starting next year too. Okay? Now, people who are in favor of this increase said, well, this is a necessary increase in order to maintain and expand vital infrastructure in the area as the population continues to grow, and the funds will be used from everything from daily operations to system maintenance and conservation efforts. Now, I'm not sitting here saying it doesn't cost money to maintain infrastructure. We all know that it does. But in case you haven't noticed, the common theme here is that, well, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance on things, so only now you're going to have to pay for it. And by the way, this is coming at a time when everything costs a record amount of money because of where inflation has brought our economy to in the last 5 years. One of the city council members there even admitted that they haven't looked at everything yet as far as cutting costs and tightening up the budget before proposing this increase, which is something that they are obligated to do, but they haven't done it yet. And that's pretty typical of government, both big and small. Let's raise the taxes, let's raise the fees. Let's not worry about how much money we're already bringing in and how much of it's being wasted. We're not going to look at that. So this 11% tax increase goes into effect immediately, and residents will see the change reflected on their next water bill. And this story is far from over, because let's move on over to DeKalb County in Georgia. They just got notice that their water bill is going to continue going up annually for the next 10 years at least. Starting this month and for every year after, for the next 10 years, the water bill will be going up 10% each year between now and 2034. So right now, your $100 water bill goes to $110. But think about it. In the next 10 years, it is going to be a 100% increase. Actually more than that if you factor in inflation. So a water bill that's $100 right now will be $260 in 10 years from now. They also have the same story over there in DeKalb County, that they're going to use the money for infrastructure upgrades because they have pipes in the ground that are literally 100 years old that need updating. And because of the old pipes, they've had some of the water mains burst over the years and water outages over the years, different problems like that. Now, last time I checked, property taxes should be going towards these type of infrastructure upgrades for the local community. Everybody already pays a record amount of property taxes, but that's not enough. You're telling me the schools need to get 40 or 50% of the property tax revenue, and none of that can be taken away to help upgrade some of this vital infrastructure? People actually need to pay a higher water bill? It is out of control, guys. Over in Pennsylvania, they're facing a similar problem. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they're looking to raise the water bill by 33% over there right now in one shot. Forget about a 10% increase a year or a one-time 11% increase. They want a 33% increase in Pittsburgh. This woman who is working as a teacher in Pittsburgh says, honest to God, I can't afford this increase. We just had this last year, and it feels like we're being asked to pay for deferred maintenance. Like I just said, everybody is now being asked to pay for deferred maintenance. Sounds pretty familiar with the condo situation. Oh, we built these condos 50 or 60 years ago. We hardly did anything. People who bought them for pennies didn't have to pay a dime to maintain them. And now everybody who owns one is getting hit with record high expenses because, of course, they need to be fixed now in 2025 when everything costs more than ever. In Pittsburgh, they're saying that if they increase the water bill over there, then it will increase their revenue by $84.5 million, which includes lead pipe replacement and costly pump upgrades. And this is going to affect about 81,000 water customers, plus sewer-only and stormwater-only accounts, bringing the affected accounts to about 116,000 in the city and some of the surrounding municipalities of Pittsburgh. And if this is approved, they're saying that the average water bill could rise an extra $40 a month or so within the next 2 years. You know, I find it very interesting too that none of these major infrastructure projects were done prior to the pandemic, prior to everything costing an absolute fortune. It needs to be done now when people are already completely strapped with just the regular cost of living right now. This is the time when it needs to be done. It didn't need to be done 5 to 10 years ago. It all has to be done right now. And remember, last year in Pittsburgh, they already had an increase in water bills, just like the woman said. It actually went up 13% last year. So now they're looking at another 33% hike in just 1 year. Here's one guy in Pittsburgh who really knows what he's talking about. He goes, the only thing that doesn't go up when inflation goes up seems to be people's wages. Even though this is a publicly run utility, there are folks at the top of the business who make a lot of money. Absolutely. Kind of in line with what I just said. Why does all of this all of a sudden need to be done right now? Well, also, if they do it right now, they can charge a record amount of money for the work that needs to be done, right? Because they can hide behind inflation and the increased cost of doing business, and they can artificially charge more and make a larger profit on doing these infrastructure upgrades than they could ever make before. That might be kind of roaming into conspiracy theory territory, which I don't really consider myself any sort of conspiracy theorist, but the coincidences are pretty stunning, don't you think? And apparently this has been an ongoing problem over there because one of the state senators from Pennsylvania said that this is actually the 5th time that Pittsburgh Water has asked for a rate increase since she was elected back in 2018. So in the last 7 years, they've asked for an increase 5 times. One guy said last year he was paying $103, and after the increase, it went up to $144. So now, if there's another increase, he's probably going to be paying over $200 a month starting next year. And no, it is not over. There are more places we got to talk about. San Diego, California, okay? Residents there have been experiencing unexpected increases in their water bills, with some people reporting that it has jumped over $100 overnight. And this is coming months before the city is supposed to be proposing a water rate hike that's supposed to take effect in January of 2026. Here's one woman who says that her latest water bill increased by $250. That's an increase. That wasn't the total bill. It was an extra $250. And she thought maybe she used a lot of water that month, or maybe that there was some kind of leak in her sprinklers. I don't know. But one thing she did say is that the timing for this increase is horrible because money's really tight right now. So it's not a good time to raise these rates. Like I just said, everybody's feeling the increased cost of living as a major burden, but we're going to raise your utility bill now and make homeownership even more unaffordable than it already is. And it's not like it's just one person. Apparently, a lot of people on the Nextdoor app in San Diego have been talking about this and complaining about it. And one user reported an $80 increase. Another person saw their bill jump by another $100. In an extreme case, one person saw their bill double to about $488 for 1 month. So after looking at a bunch of these water bills, it became apparent that most of the increases have been coming from the sewer service charge from the city. There's been an increase in that charge. And according to city officials, they say that the rate is based on water usage between November and April. Due to an unusually dry winter, customers use more water for landscaping, resulting in higher sewer service charges. And even if residents reduce their water usage now, their current sewer service charge won't change as it is locked in for an entire year. Well, isn't that convenient? Now, this kind of leads me into a little personal story I want to go into that I actually had with my water bill. Well, I used to own a duplex in West Palm Beach, Florida. And besides the mortgage and the property taxes, the water bill was actually the third highest expense. Maybe it was even more than the property taxes now that I'm thinking about it, that we had at this property. The water bill there would be consistently over $300 a month just for the water in the sewer. And it seemed like the water bill just always continued to go up. And the crazy thing is, I thought maybe it was because of the sprinklers at the property, because it had sprinklers for the lawn. But later on, I figured out that the sprinklers actually ran off of a well system and it didn't increase the water bill a single bit. So this was all just based on usage. And actually, the highest part of the water bill wasn't even the usage, it was the sewer fees, just like the city of San Diego is claiming that's the reason everybody's bill is so high. So every time you flush a toilet or water goes down the sewer, they're charging you for that too. So going back to the San Diego story, they're proposing a rate increase that's still pending approval in San Diego. And if it passes, the sewer rates could jump another 31% over the next 4 years, while the water rates are going to be set to increase an additional 62% over that same time frame. And this is what they say. The city representatives say, these increases are designed to ensure our systems remain safe, reliable, and financially stable. Because the property taxes that people pay on these massively expensive San Diego homes just isn't enough, right? So if you live in San Diego, watch out for this. They're having a public hearing on September 30th that everybody's free to attend. Not like it's going to matter. They're going to follow through with the increase anyways, but you can go and voice your concerns and tell them how broke you are and that you can't afford it. And I guarantee they're still going to do it. Now let's move back to St. Petersburg, Florida for a separate story here, which is this. Here's a man that inherited his mother's vacant home and has been vacant since last hurricane season, which is over a year now. And he received a bill for $300 that's due next week. He said, I went to the house and turned the water off, and we still got a $2,000 bill, and then subsequently $400 bills, and then the water is shut off from the street. So even though the water supply to the entire house has been cut off entirely, he's still getting a $400 a month water bill. How is that possible? And going back to my own experience with the water bill situation in West Palm Beach, the worst part about it is you don't even know how much water is actually being used. They do have meters on your property, and if you know how to read it, you can probably try to estimate, but that's only for the usage. You don't have no way to meter how much you're being charged for the sewer charge as well. So this whole thing is just a giant scam, guys. And the problem has been so widespread in St. Petersburg, Florida, that back in March of this year, the city council actually hired a consulting firm to review the billing abnormalities and high consumption data after the hurricanes last year. So the city's saying, well, this is definitely related to the hurricanes because probably what happened is there was a lot of damage from the storms, and some of the homes were flooded and appliances became disconnected and water was being used continuously without people knowing about it. Also, this is a problem in Michigan. In Muskegon, Michigan, they just approved a 10% increase for the water bills over there back in July. This is probably the lowest increase actually out of all of the ones we've talked about so far. They're estimating that the average household bill will only see about a $2 increase as of August. So if you live in Muskegon, Michigan, and you happen to be watching this video, keep an eye on your water bill and let us know how much the increase actually is. But why am I talking about this? Well, let's think about this. Buying a house today is very unaffordable, right? But some people still overextend themselves in order to do it. They hardly ever think about all of the extra expenses that come along with owning a house, including something like the water bill. This is just something that completely goes over your head and you just don't think about until you start getting that water bill. My previous advice to people has always been, well, if you're interested in buying any given property, make a request to the current owner that they can give you all of their current expenses for the property. Make sure they give you the expenses. How much are they paying for the pool guy? How much are they paying for the water bill? How much is the trash pickup and recycling? All of that stuff. So that way you can kind of get a good gauge of how much your monthly fees are going to be once you move into the property. It's not going to be perfect because everybody's usage levels might be different, but it's going to be a good estimate. But even if you get that estimate, as you can see, these increases can happen at any time. Maybe you just bought a property in Pittsburgh because it's one of the most affordable places to buy a house right now, and you're getting hit with this 33% increase that you weren't expecting. In fact, in Miami Beach, where I live, there was a email from the mayor just a couple of months ago saying that we dodged the bullet in Miami Beach and they were able to keep the water bills the same for at least another year. But that means, you know, for sure there's going to be an inevitable increase in the future, which means if you live in a house, you're going to have a higher water, sewer, and trash bill. And if you live in a condo like I do, you're going to see an increase in your HOA fees because the entire building is going to be consuming more water. So no matter what, no matter where you live, you are going to be affected by this at some point down the line. I'm telling you guys, these increases in the cost of living are getting so outrageous. And I think that's what I'm going to do my next video about, just entirely on that. Because this water bill thing is just one example. And as you can see, I named numerous different places across the country where this is happening. It's not just a Florida problem. It's not just a California problem. It is all over the place. And if it hasn't gotten to you yet, it's probably going to in the future. So consider yourself lucky until you get hit with that increase. So let me know what you guys are all seeing out there with your utility bill increases. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.